Good afternoon. My name's Alexandra Smith, and I'm part of the Genomic and Precision Medicine team at IQVIA. For those of you who don't know us, IQVIA is a leading global provider of advanced analytics, technology solutions, and clinical research services to the life science industry. We have over 80,000 employees worldwide and are present in over 100 countries. But today I want to focus on some of the key trends and challenges we're seeing in genomics and how IQVIA is working to support innovation and progress in this really exciting field. So the reason genomics has really come to the fore in recent years and is such a hot topic right now is that the cost of sequencing has dropped dramatically. From costing millions to sequence a single genome just over a decade ago, the latest technology actually allows us to sequence an entire human genome for around $200 US. Now this has meant that genomic analysis has become a lot more accessible and a lot more possible to implement at scale. And indeed, we're seeing a large number of initiatives pop up worldwide with really ambitious target cohort sizes in terms of the number of individuals that they're looking to sequence. Now, this opens the door for all the downstream applications of genomic analysis to be brought into mainstream care pathways, clinical development, and also vastly increases the pool of data available to generate new insights and new discoveries. So what are those downstream applications and how can genomics help us change the way we think or approach healthcare? Now, the answer really is that genomics impacts at every level, right through from understanding mechanisms of disease and drug target identification, through to assessing patient risk of disease and diagnosing patients and informing their treatment, all the way to areas that you wouldn't necessarily associate with genomics, for instance, patient flow through hospitals. In the UK, we know that around 1 in 15 hospital admissions is due to an adverse drug reaction. And we also know that a lot of those are preventable through pharmacogenomic testing, which would allow us to identify patients at risk of a drug-gene interaction and prescribe accordingly. Now, the way we find out about those interactions and associations is by looking at genomic data in the context of the patient. The value of genomic data in isolation is limited. You need to link it to all that other data about the patient, i.e. clinical records, imaging, other biomarker testing, all of that tells you about what's actually happening in the individual. And that's actually when you're able to tip from those kind of descriptive diagnostic applications of genomic data into the more predictive, prescriptive modalities. And that's where IQVIA comes in. We're data experts, and we have a huge amount of expertise and capabilities in linking and bringing together those different types of data. In fact, we often describe ourselves as plumbers because we're the ones joining all the dots and making sure that data flows through where it needs to go. Now, IQVIA historically has been extremely focused on its pharma clients, but in recent years we've been engaging more and more with non-pharma clients and specifically stakeholders in the payer, provider and government space, because ultimately that's where this data is being generated and where it's being held. We've heard a lot today about how that data is siloed between systems, and that ultimately means for genomics that there's no single database which is large enough to meet all the requirements to drive powerful research. Large databases are either not linked to rich enough clinical data, or they don't have the depth of genetic data that's required, or they don't have adequate ethnic and geographic diversity represented. And when we think about the challenges to kind of creating that ideal genomic data set, it's really about three things. Firstly, it's about accessing those comprehensive clinical records. That's imperative to make sense of the genomic data, but requires significant infrastructure as well as technology. It's about patient privacy and anonymity. The more comprehensively clinical and genomic data is linked, the harder it becomes to ensure patient privacy and anonymity is maintained. So we need solutions there as well. And finally, it's about aggregating data at scale. We've talked a lot about how data, or healthcare data specifically, is siloed across systems within countries, but it's also very fragmented across countries globally. And genomics really is a global issue. Add to that the huge variability in how that data is collected, stored, structured, and accessed. And that's what I want to cover on this next slide, which is kind of a global view of what we're seeing in terms of genomic data generation. So we're seeing a huge number of initiatives generating this data crop up worldwide. When we did this exercise 2 years ago, we counted close to 200 initiatives, and that number is only growing. And add to that doesn't even capture all the data that's being generated in the course of normal clinical care, which is often held within labs or hospitals and unstructured PDF reports. On top of that, we've got a huge issue of diversity. You'll notice this map is quite top-heavy, with actually very little coming from the Global South. Now, we know that clinical research to date has been extremely focused on white males aged 30 to 45 weighing around 70 kilos. That doesn't represent me, and it certainly doesn't represent the global population. So if we want the new treatments that are being developed to actually work in the populations they're intended for, we need to address this issue of diversity. So I'll just finish here by saying that the key to driving innovation in and through genomics lies in improving the connectivity between these data sets, both between genomic and different other types of clinical data, and between genomic data sets across countries. It's only then that we're able to actually derive the true value of genomics, and allows us to drive better research by increasing sample sizes in studies, allowing us to validate our findings in cohorts with different characteristics, and also allows us to begin to address that issue of diversity. We can then also optimize trial design, finding the right patient for the right trial in the right location. This is extremely important for trials involving very rare diseases, where quite often you won't find in a single country enough patients to run a trial. So you really need to be able to find those globally. And finally, we can improve care, especially by accelerating diagnosis. So if we allow physicians to compare a patient they have to other patients in other countries with similar characteristics and symptoms, they'll more easily be able to diagnose them. Now, the challenge to that is obviously that no one country will be able to coordinate this effort, and there's a need for a trusted third party. Now, we're already seeing supranational institutions like the European Union address this. I'm thinking about the European Health Data Space. But ultimately, it's going to need common data standards and technology platforms to support that. And that's where IQVIA, with its decades of expertise in designing and deploying solutions for the most demanding applications of healthcare, can really support. So I'll stop there, and thank you very much. If you want to speak to me, that's me.